Hey guys, welcome back to Ben & Bring's channel. If you haven't been here before, we do product reviews, tutorials, and we have a live chat feature on our website to help you through your Broody 911s. Check it out at benandbrewing.com. Today's video, we got our hands on iGulu's newest beer kit, which actually is a non-alcoholic beer kit. We're going to brew it up, see how it tastes, see if there's any tweaks that could possibly be made to it to make it better. Let's check it out. All right, quick reminder before we get started, today's video is sponsored by iGulu. You'll find a 20% off coupon listed below if you do wish to purchase the iGulu S1 or F1. Keep in mind that is an affiliate link. It does help our channel. I never actually made non-alcoholic beer, although I have done some research on it, and some of the methods can be kind of destructive to the beer flavor or downright impossible if you don't have the equipment to do it. So I was very intrigued when iGulu announced that they had created this non-alcoholic kit. So iGulu states that this finished beer should finish out at or below 0.5% ABV. So I'm curious to see where it's going to finish, especially with the yeast that they have included in the kit. iGulu also mentions it's important to consume this beer relatively quickly, which makes sense. Generally, beer is very shelf-stable because of the alcohol content and the pH lowering that happens within the beer. So microorganisms typically don't like to take root. Because this is a non-alcoholic beer, it's not going to be as shelf-stable, coupled with the fact that we're doing a no-boil beer kit, which is typical with the iGulu. That means if your sanitization isn't good and you're not being super careful with this particular beer, you can get infections and off flavors, and you might end up with a non-alcoholic sour beer. So because we've never actually brewed a non-alcoholic beer before, I do have some concerns with how this kit will finish out. Will it be too sweet? Will there not be enough hops? Will it actually taste like an enjoyable beer? We're going to find out. But first, let's brew it. If you brewed on the iGulu before, you know the steps are very, very simple, but we're going to run through them anyway for those of you that maybe haven't done this before. The first and most important step, especially with this beer, as I mentioned before, is sanitizing. You're going to sanitize everything that's going to come in contact with the beer. That includes the inside of the Triton keg, includes the dip tube, and the serving tube as well. Make sure all of that is well sanitized. We use Star San, highly recommended, 30-second contact time, and it ensures that everything is sanitary that will be coming in contact. Next step, add 1 gallon of clean filtered water to your Triton keg. And as I've mentioned in other videos, make sure it's either filtered, and if you don't have a filter to remove the chlorine, which is important to minimize off flavors, go ahead and get like a bottled spring water. Don't use distilled water. You need the mineral content in there for the beer flavoring and for the yeast health. Next, you're going to add both packets of the hop extract, both the hop flavoring extracts and the bittering extract. Next, you're going to add your 3 packs of dried malt extract. Now, what's interesting with this particular kit is the amount that they're giving you as far as the extract goes is quite a bit less than they normally would give you in a beer kit. Obviously, that's to help avoid a lot of alcohol production, but it is going to lend itself hopefully to a drier beer and not a sweeter beer. With any luck, there's enough hops in there to counterbalance the potential sweetness that's going to occur from the malt. Once you've added your dried malt extract, go ahead and take a sanitized spoon and stir it until it's about 80% dissolved. If you're particular and you want to make sure that it's completely dissolved in there, go right ahead and do that. The original gravity that we're probably going to get out of this with that amount of malt extract is 1029 specific gravity. Next step, go ahead and pitch your yeast on top of your now wort with the hops already added. Do not stir it at this stage. Go ahead and seal up your Triton keg, making sure your dip tube is in place. Once your Triton keg is sealed up, go ahead and load it into your iGulu, making sure to add the pressure monitor and the serving tube into the tap handle. Once that's done, go ahead and put the lid on it. Go ahead and scan your RFID card and confirm that the fermentation schedule shown is for non-alcoholic beer. This fermentation schedule is going to be a lot shorter than you're used to because the yeast is not going to be chewing through a lot of these sugars. So it should be about 3 days at 60 degrees and then 3 days at 35 degrees to crash cool it. After that, it should be ready to drink and enjoy. And again, as a reminder, this does need to be consumed relatively quickly. All right, so while our beer kit is fermenting, which is only gonna take about 6 days, so we should have that ready relatively quickly, let's talk about how iGulu was able to potentially make a non-alcoholic beer. We still have to wait and see how good it is, but it's interesting what they have done. First of all, the yeast that they're using is actually a special kind of yeast that doesn't consume a lot of the more complex sugars and starches that you typically find in a malt or a wort. What you'll end up finding in the finished product of this wort or potential beer as it's going to be, the yeast is not going to be able to ferment out those longer chain molecules of sugar, which makes it the majority of what's in your wort. Therefore, the alcohol potential is actually very low. Now, a couple of risks with this and some concerns. Because there's so much of the sugary wort that's going to be left unfermented, you could end up with a kind of a sugar bomb or something that's cloyingly sweet in the finish. To counteract this, you have to add additional hops. What I noticed from the ingredient pack is there's only 2 hop extract packets, which seems to be about the amount that they normally add for one of their pale ales as an example. The difference in this case is that there's actually less malt being added. So, fingers crossed, there's enough hops in the finished beer to counteract the sweetness, and we'll find out. Okay, so it's been 6 days since we brewed iGulu's non-alcoholic kit. A couple learnings along the way, but before we get into tasting it, I did want you guys to take a look at it here. It is actually quite cloudy, which I guess the type of yeast iGulu used is typical of a very low flocculation yeast. So it is going to stay a little bit cloudy as you go. It doesn't like to drop bright in a lot of beers that you would normally drink. This is a pale lager, so it should be relatively clean. So, should we give it a taste?
Let's do it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
The aroma has some hops in it. It smells sweet. It's very sweet.
It is, yeah.
Not like it's straight up malt, which is obviously very malty and very sweet. There has been some change in it from the yeast, but it definitely has a little bit of a sweeter finish. I do get a little hop bitterness in the end, in the palate. It does taste relatively clean. It has the same hop profile that like their pale ale has.
Yes.
That kind of citrusy orange that is just from the hop extracts they're using and the type of hops, which I think is Magnum. I think it's Magnum.
It's because you said this was a pale lager, is that
Pale lager, yeah. One of the issues that we had, which I didn't realize during fermentation, was our lid on the Triton keg was leaking. So all the pressure that normally goes into the fermentation did leak out during the fermentation. So it never actually built any pressure. It actually didn't build up any carbonation either. I only realized it when I finally turned the CO2 on in the iGulu to start to push it out, to serve it, and the lid started hissing. So it was losing CO2. I swapped out a couple parts. I figured out it was actually the serving, I don't know what you call it, the little part that screws into the top of the lid, which you hook in the serving line to. That's what was leaking. I'm not sure if something got jammed inside one of the valves or what happened. I swapped it out, the keg pressurized. Unfortunately, for today's tasting, we're gonna have to do it without carbonation. And it is definitely lacking carbonation. It is very flat. I think carbonation would help.
I agree. Being that it's supposed to be a pale lager, I don't know if you particularly like beer and those styles you'd like this, just because I don't get any of those styles in there.
A lot of what I would expect from a lager, crisp,
yeah,
clean, very, maybe some noble hop profile, a little bit of crispness to it, but not a lot of malt, very, very clean. For this being a pale lager, which is kind of a cross between the two, I guess, it's not crisp. Carbonation would probably help, for sure. I think additional hops would help to balance out some of the sweetness. Obviously, carbonation would make it a little crisper, a little brighter. This is not what I would expect from a lager.
Right.
This is giving more fruity, more ale vibes. This is a very, very basic, natural way to do it, not really processed. Now, let's talk about the ABV. So with the malt that was added, it had an OG and original gravity of 1029, so 1.029. After fermentation, after the 6 days, it actually is down to 1024, 1.024. So with that puts it at a range of about 0.7% ABV. iGulu said it should be at 0.5 or below to be considered a non-alcoholic beer. Now, keep in mind, with our measuring tools that we're using for this particular batch, and I should have used something more accurate, I just threw the tilt in there. So there is going to be some margin of error with the tilt hydrometer because it is a floating, reading the angle of, so it could be off by who knows. What I should have done is used a floating hydrometer to really get it dialed in and get exact measurements. I didn't do that. It is what it is. I'm sure it's close enough to still be considered non-alcoholic. Definitely something you could tweak. This is a good base that I think you could throw some additional things in there, additional hops or or something to help to balance out some of that residual sweetness that's in there. And if you're looking for something that's non-alcoholic, I think once that carbonates up, you got a pretty good option.
Yeah.
You know?
I wouldn't mind revisiting this and trying to tweak it on our end and see what we can come.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Yeah. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching our video on iGulu's newest kit, their non-alcoholic pale lager. Let us know if you brewed this before, if you have any other tips and tricks that might help to improve or even change the flavor of this beer, if you tried your own version of a non-alcoholic beer in the iGulu. Catch you later, my friends.